Hi everybody, and welcome to the Sponsorship Opportunities panel. We're going to talk about how and why we should talk to teams, leagues, the pros, individuals. Why should we get into that space? Well, we actually understand why sponsorship makes sense in traditional sports. Why should we do this in esports? Real quick myself, I'm the managing director over at Magid Advisors, a long-standing research consultancy firm. I've been in the esports space for about 12 years. I used to compete back when we actually had to pay for our flights and booze and travel and everything. We'd be lucky enough to win a graphics card or some memory and just hope to sell that to kind of pay for our travel. Nowadays, it's a little different. You get first class, business class, you get DJ after parties. It's a different world now. I'm really excited to see that. I'm a little jealous that didn't happen in my time. I wish I was born 10 years later, but oh well. So, real quick, I'm going to ask these guys to introduce themselves and what your title is, what you do in esports. Make it quick so we can just get right into the conversation.
So, good afternoon. My name is Dan Ciccone. I am the managing director at rEvXP. We are a talent management and full-service marketing agency that strictly works within the space of esports, and really started our agency a couple of years ago to ensure that the top pros and influencers within the space, like Stan, get paid better than video cards.
I wish that was true, but thank you, I appreciate that.
And free booze after events.
I'm Robert Bole. I'm traditionally come from the development side. I previously worked on Call of Duty and a few other games. And then I moved over into studio management, had an esports team with Denial, and now I also advise and work with the esports team on their content strategies, the most latest being NRG.
Hello, my name is Steve Arhancet. I am the co-CEO for Team Liquid. We are one of the largest esports organizations in the Western world. We also have a production company that's called One Up Studios that does a lot of commercial work and videos that you see on pre-roll ads for Twitch, and also when you see tournaments, kind of the features that you see on players in background. And then we also have an agency as well called Liquid Media that basically is an outsourced influencer management arm for brands that want to connect with influencers.
And I'm Daniel Kelley. I'm the Director of Marketing for HyperX, which is a global maker of gaming gear, such as gaming headsets and keyboards and mice, mouse pads. We were born as the high-performance brand of Kingston, making high-end memory and SSDs. The brand started in 2002. We've been heavily involved in esports, sponsoring teams for over a decade already, including the two on the panel. Very global company, deep into esports, and excited to be on the panel.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. As a lot of you can see, we actually have a really good variety of people here. If you actually look at any of the models around esports, you have the sponsorship agency, you have two teams, and you have an actual sponsor here. So let's kick things off with kind of how you actually fit in this space. Again, with the agency, teams, and hardware sponsors. Start with you, Dan.
So yeah, we got involved in this space. We saw a very uneven value exchange. A lot of the top pros in esports are either at the same level or have surpassed traditional athletes. Their social following, with their kind of influence. So really, the story you gave earlier is not far off from what we initially saw within the space, that the kind of contracts that were being engaged, it was a very unfair value transaction that was taking place. So we stepped in.
So I had cheap booze back then, hopefully, and you had cheap contracts.
It's much better booze now. But as Matt
and better contracts too, right?
So yeah, but as Matt was talking about earlier, like there's still a major need in the space right now for representation. To make sure that a lot of these pros are actually compensated for what they bring for a sponsor.
Yeah. So I fit into the space in a number of different ways. First and foremost is on the development side of developing games that are esports focused and have esports features, and looking at, my first game was Call of Duty 2, where we didn't put any thought or effort into the esports community, and yet there were people competing on it, and they would make up how they got involved and how the tournaments worked. And now we've evolved from a development standpoint to think about that in pre-production of like, is this going to be an esports title? And if so, what does that mean? Because you can't do it by accident anymore, where we used to be able to do it by accident in the past. So now we get a lot more involved. And since then, I've also evolved in the moving over to the team side, owning some teams, advising other teams on how can we continue to push that forward? Because I'm always interested in what can we do that is different, that's beyond putting your logo or brand on a jersey or sponsoring an event or being present on the stage. Are there things that we can create that have never been created before that add value in entirely different ways?
So actually, real quick, what are some of your sponsors right now for Energy?
NRG is all over the board. I just advise NRG. And really what I was looking to do with NRG and what I'm looking to do with esports in general is look at how can we bring in much larger corporations to create content that doesn't exist and is not traditionally esports content, but appeals to the same demographics as esports. So that's my focus, is not how can we focus on current sponsors like HyperX and others, but how can we go out and create an entirely different vertical that the major automotive or beverage or other companies can come into and actually get value and putting money into.
Got it.
Yep. So in terms of what I do in the sponsorship space, we started Team Liquid, kind of bootstrapped the company, and our partners are the ones that basically financed all of our operations. So really building those relationships in order to gain value to generate more fans, but also engagement for our partners. I think we approach it in a way where we identify a particular community that's in gaming. We might say Counter-Strike or League of Legends or maybe something even like Civ. And we say, how are we going to serve up a need that exists within that community and then do something that is only possible because of Team Liquid and HyperX. And we ideate on it, we brainstorm, we figure out how much it's going to cost in order for us to do X, Y, and Z at a particular event, or it's going to be around a certain player, or we're going to bring these two players that haven't met each other before together to do something really special. So that's kind of where I feel I bring in the expertise, is knowing what that is. And it's so hard because you kind of come out from the outside looking in. What do we do in gaming that's authentic, or that's going to be read well and reacted to the right way? So really, that's what we provide is that expertise, and then also the inventory to get it done. So we do about 4 million monthly viewable hours on Twitch.tv. So we've got a huge streaming network. We've got 6.2 million followers on our social. So how do we pull in all these pieces of inventory to do something really cool for a client? So we have a lot of endemic clients that we work with in the space, like Alienware and HyperX, and then we have a handful that we've done some activations with, like Nissan, this is just real quick, a fun example. So Nissan came to us and they said, hey, we'd like to work with you, but we don't know what the esports. Sorry, we don't know what.
No, they'll bleep that out.
We're encouraged to swear.
We don't know
Will
what
they bleep that
esports
out?
is.
Do we know
What
for
is
sure?
this thing? I was like, look, okay, just trust me. Give me a date. I'll crash your website. I promise you, I'll just crash your website. So we went to Voyboy and we said, hey, Voyboy, like,
Who is Voyboy?
Voyboy is a streamer on Twitch. At the time, was one of our players, and we told him, hey, we need you to go to Nissan.com, and we need you to, it was actually NissanUSA.com, and we need you to go on the site and customize a car. And he ended up crashing the site, which was awesome. So I went into the agency the next day and I said, hey, what happened? They're like, who is this Voyboy, reference URL? And literally that was kind of the only way that we could prove, hey, esports has value. Like, we can crash your website. So that's kind of how we're involved, both endemic and non-endemic.
Anybody else have websites they want to get crashed around?
Now we charge for it.
Well said.
So I'm, as corporate marketing, we have a lot of marketing regions around the world that all have local teams and local language that they also directly manage. We have over 30 esport teams.
How many regions do you guys play in?
We break it up by 5 regions. We're pretty much everywhere because, again, we're HyperX, but we're part of the larger Kingston company that's been around for 30 years. So what we found out early on, a good 15 years ago, is when we were looking at who was buying the high-end, really high-end memory, the really high-end SSDs and so on, they were gamers. And so there was an early on understanding that we needed to get into this space. And then as esports and some players started getting some notoriety, certainly with broadband and then the greater games and everything, we really jumped in. And so now, our job is to hopefully bring the fans closer to the players on the teams like Liquid and Energy. Authentic, I think, is a key word word. We really want to bring out the personalities of these players. So we do work as closely as we can. We see them as relationships, not just sponsorships. That let's get together, let's figure out where we're going to be in an event, or what's a good idea. Let's figure out something cool, unique, funny, and those are usually the things that pop and get a lot of views or a lot of activation activity, that type of thing. So it's a big job, but it's a growing space, and it's just filled with opportunities. I think just one more point. I think we are in a good spot because we make gaming gear, right, as an endemic sponsor, and we're in the space. So I think as other brands are trying to come in, you definitely need to find your voice and find your unique thing that you're going to bring to the space that's going to add value to it and help it, keep moving down the field.
So Dan, let me ask you. Well, Dan, I suppose. Tell us what endemic and non-endemic really means.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, endemic is a product that is necessary for the event, right, or the game to unfold. Non-endemic would be anything that's really not specifically gaming related.
Do we have any non-endemic sponsors or groups here?
Potential
Raise
sponsors.
For these guys. Okay, we got one or two. It's always tricky when someone says, "Oh, you're non-endemic." Do you think that kind of pushes a brand out, perhaps?
I think it might intimidate some brands. We talk a lot about authenticity. We talk about a lot about
I'm keeping track
organic.
of how many times authenticity is mentioned out there.
Yeah,
the day.
no, and and
across,
influencers, right? Influencers. So we try to stay away from that. What we try to encourage all of our clients, and what we specifically utilize the teams for, is how to engage the audience. One of the things we really haven't talked a lot about today are the fans, right? The community. The reality is, the fans in the community are really what's driving a lot of what's happening within esports. We talk a lot about League of Legends and its IP, and they're in control. The reality is they hit a couple of bumps because the community didn't like some of the new rules that they were instituting, right? The players didn't like it. So what we encourage with our sponsors or partners that we bring into the space is using the teams and the individual personalities to get that, to really engage the audience from a conversation standpoint, versus just throwing up your logo. Real quick example, Turtle Wax comes into the space. The reality is 90% of
Turtle Wax.
Turtle Wax came into the space,
Okay.
excuse me.
What are they?
So the reality is 90% of the content that they were involved with, no one ever actually saw the product, right? And a lot of people were like, why is Turtle Wax even here? What was great about working with them is they let Optic Gaming start the conversation, and then the fans took over. And if you literally went to Reddit or Twitter, the fans immediately took over and had a discussion amongst themselves why they thought it made a ton of sense. Right? These guys all, the average cost of a car in the Optic garage is probably about $50,000 or $60,000. Cars are very much a part of their lifestyle, and the audience picked up on it immediately. So again, it's really how do you engage the audience through the teams or the individuals and let the audience actually tell your story for you.
So you actually sit in between both the brands and the teams. And how do you like to brag about Optic Gaming?
Very recent example, General Electric just paid $7 million to put their logo on the jersey of the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have 2.1 million Twitter followers on their main Twitter page. Optic Gaming has 2.4 million followers, and arguably, when you look at them as a whole, they have well over 24 million social followers. And when you look at the fact that GE is willing to pay $7 million, even when you look at a lot of the metrics, right? If we looked at the number of views and the audience level that Optic brings to the game, it's actually well above what the Boston Celtics do. So those are the ways that we try to brag in the space.
Well, hopefully you get to see some dishwashers for your players, I suppose. Oh, Dan, you mentioned, Dan K, you mentioned earlier about the relationship with the players or the teams and their players. Can you elaborate on some of your wins, some of your successes, or any challenges you had there?
Yeah, I think that we really rely on content, because I think the content is a great way, whether it's a video or something in person, where we can actually bring those personalities out of the players. Because anybody who's really, really good at any sport, and they have these fans, they want to get that peek behind the curtain. They want to understand their personality more than just their gameplay. I think that's what hopefully we're trying to do and provide is facilitate that. So we do silly stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit higher production value, but sometimes it's just getting a team around a table and playing pie in the face, where whipped cream's going on there. It's just, I think that they like that as well, just to get a break from the pretty rigorous practice and tournament schedule that these guys are in. That to take a break from that, I think it's good. It's comic relief. It brings the fans a little bit closer to them in terms of their personality. And at the end of the day, there's a love of gaming that I think ties us all together. So we did again look at his relationships and what are some unique and cool ways that we can bring those personalities out, bring the fans closer, and facilitating that. I think that that helps the HyperX brand get to new places.
Well, this goes a team-related question for Steve and Robert. Dan just mentioned about the busy lifestyles of the pros. Can you talk a little bit about their schedules and how you fit sponsorship activities into those times?
So I guess it first starts with the types of contracts that we have with our athletes. So right now they provide their likeness and marketing rights for certain sponsorship categories to the team, and then we then sell those rights to sponsors like HyperX so that we can fill that inventory, and we make sure that we accommodate their competitive schedule as much as possible. So we typically reserve like 1 day a week where they're doing more marketing, promotional support. And to Dan's point, it is really like figuring out that narrative that is ongoing with the teams and players, and then letting the audience peek into that information and have some insight that isn't available anywhere else. Because a lot of these guys, they'll just be seen on the tournament stream. They're just on the LCS stream. They're on the the DreamHack stream in Vegas, and that's it. And then they follow their social profiles and they get some pictures and stuff. But a sponsor can come in, or a partner can come in and provide resources to really provide additional visibility or do creative things with those teams and players. And so that's what we try to do, is just, reserve Mondays with the guys, or we reserve windows of time before and after events. So for example, NuckleDo, he just won Capcom Cup, and
who is he? What kind of game does he play?
Yeah, so NuckleDo is the best Street Fighter player in the world, and he plays for Team Liquid. He's won the last...
See, I get to let you brag about that.
Yeah, 8 events. He won Capcom Cup, but, at that event, once he's holding up the trophy and he walks off the stage, that moment where he has an opportunity to talk to his fans, and that can be provided by a partner, and it's done in a really cool way, the engagement is an all-time high, because there's more people that are going to be following NuckleDo at the Capcom Cup than following him on some week in the middle of the year outside of competition. So we really try to hone in a lot of the marketing efforts around events that the teams are playing in.
So you talked about the types of content. Can you kind of break down a couple examples of, is it a live stream that you just catch a player while they're playing? Is it a logo, or how do you integrate? Can you just give us some more color there?
Yep. So the Team Liquid package is typically some of the things that you would assume, like logo placement on the jersey. There's going to be more placement on the jersey that's going to be more expensive than other areas of the jersey, because you're going to see them on the webcam during the broadcast at events. The size of the logo, and then there's website inventory. So we have a network of sites that you can buy traditional media on. There's streaming. So what's really cool about gamers compared to other professional athletes is that they stream in their spare time, and so they're broadcasting their gameplay online, and there's a webcam and there's a chat system, and they can go to certain web pages like Voyboy did for Nissan. So there's a lot of creativity that you can do with all of the streaming traffic.
Forgive me, we actually see some traditional sports athletes actually stream themselves, right? Can you guys name a few?
I think Ronaldo did the live streaming thing on Facebook, I believe, of him learning how to play League of Legends, and it got a ton of traction, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and we actually sponsor Gordon Hayward from the Utah Jazz, because he was big into these sports before he became a professional basketball player, but he streams for us monthly, and it represents a nice crossover. The streaming world, I mean, it's obviously something that if you're a big personality and you can get into it and you like a game, that it's a great way to, again, get a lot closer to the fans there as well.
So it's not going to be like a $7 million fee, obviously, to get onto Gordon Hayward's stream. Can you talk about how much that may run, like a range, or is it different for each team you work with? How do you kind of justify the sponsor spend for each different team in each different region? It
is a range, right? You have to look at, you're saying some of the numbers at how big so you have to look at everything, right? You have to look at how many teams, how many players.
So how many teams within a team?
Yeah, how many teams within an org, I guess you would say. And you evaluate it by a lot of different factors, and it's going up a little bit each year. I mean, I think that's just the nature of the beast with such a growing industry. And we want to have long-standing relationships. I think we've had this sponsorship for at least 5-6 years going in a row. So we value a lot of different of the factors in terms of just the followings, the ability and access, and the willingness to do unique things from a content perspective, which is really key to our marketing strategy. So it ranges quite widely, but we try to customize it and get as much out of it as we can.
So you can't tell me like a ceiling or like a lower high, anything?
There's a lot of 6 figures out there, but
okay.
not too much higher.
All right, I got something. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, so Robert, you mentioned that you're looking to create new avenues for sponsors to work with teams. Can you give us some hints to that, or elaborate a little bit?
In my experience, moving from development over to team and league territory, is there is a wide range of people who could and want to sponsor esports, and there's an even smaller range of people who understand what sponsoring an esports means, right? There are people like HyperX that fit in so naturally, right? Because there's already streams that they can be president. There's already events they can be president. They're the
football to the football player.
Exactly,
the helmet
right? They're bettering the lives of the players naturally and organically. And then there are other brands that do not fit in naturally at all, right? Like a car company may not fit in naturally unless there's a specific tie-in, like with Optic. And so what I like to look at is how can we make this industry make sense for them, right? And that may be developing a slate of programming that is more like television programming and less about esports, but pulls in the same interests of esports players. And gives them something that they can wrap their head around of like, oh, I understand how to do an ad buy in television programming, right? Or build content specifically for them. For example, like, I believe they're doing this now actually. If a car company comes in and wants to sponsor Rocket League, you can make life-size Rocket League that makes sense for both audience, right?
So you put a giant booster on a car, right?
Exactly, and that's compelling content. It makes sense for the brand, and their marketing department can wrap their heads around it.
Got it.
If I can add on to that, I think a lot of marketers in the audience, when we talk about streaming, traditionally you probably envision someone just playing a game online. But the other point these guys are making is that there's really a lot of lifestyle content that is created from these individuals as well as the teams. And that's something that should not get lost in this discussion either is, while we're talking specifically about esports and the individual games, there's still a ton of lifestyle content that's created around this. It's the same reason that you see in traditional sports why you would engage with one particular pro athlete versus another. It's because you want to be a part of the lifestyle that they represent, and there's a broad representation on the panel here as well as within esports in general for those lifestyle opportunities.
No, it makes a lot of sense to you. Everyone wants to know the life of a traditional sports athlete. Well, why should this be any different for esports athletes who may even have bigger social followings? All right, so we're kind of getting towards the end, and we want to ask this amazing crowd some questions.
Yeah, we have a question right here. So, the mic here. We just got a couple minutes, and we'll move on to the next one.
Hey guys, this is Kima from Hammers Esports, and I just want to take the angle of an emerging organization. Actually, we pride ourselves in being born out of mobile esports, so Super Evil is sitting right there, and we're very much proud to emerge from that. I guess I'm taking the angle of and this is for all of you, do you see a David and Goliath effect of having too crowded of a space for teams to gain further sponsorships or further partnerships in the space? And for Steve and Dan especially, so what should organizations be taking into account, and what should partnerships take into account so that we're not overglanced, or that we're that just because of our social metrics that they're not there yet, and that we're relatively new, though our performance is pretty stellar at this point. What are you guys doing to accommodate the emerging esports organizations versus differentiating from an overcrowded space?
Sorry, we're going to have to kind of get the question going, get some answers going. Super quick answers, please.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of existing sponsors that are currently in the space, and there's a lot of advertisers, services and products that are looking to get into the space and they're not sure how to get in, and they are trying to educate themselves on what is authentic and what's not, and who is the right lifestyle brand to be associated with and not. And I think it's not oversaturated. I think a lot of it comes down to creativity and the right associations that make sense, like the turtle wax and optic, and how that's communicated and what's the messaging and what's the big reveal about it and how are the players talking about it, how are the orgs talking about it. And what I see missing a lot are a lot of the ideation, like getting it right, like having the right creative associated with the integration of a sponsor and a player or a sponsor and a team. So I think it's just having the good idea and having the right kind of budget to make sure that it happens, and then just brainstorming with a client and making sure that it's right. So big or small, there's still a way to kind of engage in the space. Because you can have small budget, you can have big budget, you can still get things done.